Every magic trick consists of 3 parts, or acts. The first part is called the pledge. The magician shows you something ordinary. The second act is called the turn. The magician takes the ordinary something and makes it into something extraordinary. But you wouldn't clap yet, because making something disappear isn't enough. You have to bring it back.
You're listening to 91 Reasons, a journey into the twisted landscape of pop culture. Keep your hands and arms inside the podcast at all times. And now, the voice, Jeff Tucker.
Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of 91 Reasons. I am Jeff Tucker, I'm the voice. When I was a kid, I was obsessed with magic. I watched every Doug Henning special, David Copperfield, Harry Blackstone. We had a teacher at our elementary school, Mr. Abernathy, who was a magician. And I remember when he decided to retire, the last thing he did before he retired was he put on a big magic show. And I must have been, I want to say 9. And I'll never forget, they go, please welcome the magical Abernathy. And all the kids are like politely applauding. And I was like, woo, magic! And some kid looked at me like, what's wrong with you? I was like, I like the magic. So I was always into magic. And then down the street, 3 houses down, was a guy that we used to call the Magician. I don't even know the guy's name. But he was a member of the Magic Castle, and he was always telling me he was going to someday take me. Well, he never took me. He never took me to the castle. I had to wait until I was 27 to go to the castle.
Was that when we first met?
When Ed was there, I was 27 before I got to go to the Magic Castle. I've been 100 times since. It's the greatest place on earth. But the thing is, when you're a kid, there's few places better on earth. Like, going to Disneyland is great. Going to the magic shop on Main Street at Disneyland is 10 times better than just going to Disneyland. And for a kid like me, I was short, I was dorky, I was a geek. A magic set offered a chance to impress people. People would pay attention to you. Hey, he's going to do magic. And then you do something with coins or silks or cards, and suddenly you were cooler than they were. I can't dunk a basketball, I can't throw a fastball, but I can force a card, right? That's a skill, right? So I'm sitting here with a good friend of mine who happens to be a professional magician who's performed many times at the Magic Castle. I have seen you perform at the Magic Castle. Everybody who's here, please welcome Ken Baker.
Yay!
Thank you.
So it begs the question, how do you, like, I know how you get into magic. I don't know if your story is different than mine, but the question is, how do you stay in magic? Because that's the problem I had. I couldn't stay in magic because as you get older, the illusions you want get more expensive, and your mom won't buy those.
Correct.
I wanted the hippity hop rabbits, and they were like $250 in 1982, and she wasn't buying it.
Nice. So let me just backtrack a little bit. I'm not a professional, so I do this as a hobby, but yes, I do perform at the Magic Castle. We have a lot of areas where our members can sit down and perform. But I think to answer your question, yes, my magical career, if you to put it that way, has art. So I started probably when, just like you, I was 8 years old, and it was a way to overcome shyness and social awkwardness. And so as I guess we can fill some details in later, but I kind of arced up and really by my mid to late teens was when I was doing most of my paid shows, and by that point I had illusions and doves and rabbits and things. And then as I got a little bit older, life comes along and you have a full-time job, and magic was just not part of that, so it just kind of sat on the shelf, and I would just do an occasional things at a party here and there. Until several years ago when I decided to get back into it. So now I'm much more involved and stay involved in it.
Now you're the member of the Magic Castle.
I am.
The Academy of Magical Arts.
Correct. Technically, we are all members of the Academy of Magical Arts. Our clubhouse is the Magic Castle. We have magician members and associate members. Magician members go through an extra process. We have to go through an audition. We have a membership committee, and you have to put together 3 to 5 effects and perform for the committee. Once you do that, then you become a magician member. And for the most part, the membership privileges are equal as far as bringing people and things like that. The main differences are we have one of the greatest libraries of magic in the world, which there's only a small section which the associate members have access to. Also, we do lectures every Sunday, which the magicians can go to, and we'll do occasional perks, which are limited to the magician members.
So, I've been in the Magic Castle a bunch of times. I think it's the greatest. I think it's the greatest place on earth because to me it has all the greatest elements of Disneyland, with the added layer that it's not for kids. And there's something so enticing about that, and all the little nooks and crannies of going through and discovering things on your own is what gives the castle so much character that it's easy to get lost into.
Correct.
Like, I know that you've taken us on your whirlwind tour of it, and it's weird because you can go upstairs, downstairs, down a lot of stairs, up some more stairs, and end up back at the valet on flat ground. The castle defies description. It is like the TARDIS. It's bigger on the inside than it is on the outside, right?
That's Milt Larson's big joke. Is it is bigger on the inside than the outside? And that's just giving a little history of the castle. It was built in 1908, 1909. There's discussion out there about the actual date, but it was built as a residence. And then later on it became the Magic Castle. And after that, a large parking structure was added into the back, which you cannot see from the street, right? It wasn't like purposely hidden to hide it. It's just the way the land laid out. So, and then subsequently, after the fire marshal came in one time and complained about how many people they were shoving into these little rooms, they were, threatened to be shut down. So they did a quick conversion and literally converted the parking structure into additional showrooms. So when you're in from the outside, you can't see those additional. That whole, basically more than half, I think, of the space is what is not part of the original house. So yes, once you get in there, it just seems so much bigger until you realize you've left sort of, I guess akin to the Haunted Mansion at Disneyland, right? The piece you see is very small. The piece you do not see is far greater.
Is there a blueprint of it? Like, is there a picture somewhere where you can see what it looks like? Because, I'm even confused when I'm in it. I can't relate to where I'm at if I was on the outside looking in. Like, is there a way to see the drawing of where everything is laid out?
I don't think so. Right?
I mean, they used to have something in the little map, the showroom guide, but it was just so confusing. And I always sort of tell people, think about it like an upside down horseshoe, right? You really got this one side of the castle which has 3 to 4 levels to it. You come up, you cross over through the dining room, you get to the other side, and it's the opposite side of the horseshoe. So you as members or service staff, there are ways to get around, but for the most part, you as a guest, you go up and back the same way. So although people say it's so big and they get confusing, when you really understand your way around, it's really not that confusing.
I think the charm that comes from it is that there was no master plan to begin with, and that it was built piecemeal. Knott's Berry Farm is the same way. And people get lost at Knott's because we have avenues that don't go anywhere. And it's not like Disneyland where you go up to the hub and all the spokes and the lands radiate out. I think if somebody were to sit down, and they did have Caesar's Magical Empire in Las Vegas, that Milt Larson was one of the consultants on, right. And that was done, master plan, here it's going to be this way. I never got to go to that because it was open and closed within a year and a half or a really short time to make way for Celine Dion's Coliseum. But the charm of the castle is that you can see like, oh, there's this, and then somebody had an idea to put this in, and then they put that in, and then this, and there's no real uniformity to it, and that's what makes it so charming. Like, for example, they have pictures on the walls, and then every once in a while, one of the pictures is way too deep for a regular picture. or there's stuff inset in the walls to look down on. Like you were showing me the Haunted Mansion display.
Yes.
Where you can see the Pepper's Ghosts dancers, which is
Yes.
really cool. And we actually
how they have that is still beyond me. Why the Disney Archives isn't in possession of that it still amazes me, but I'm glad we have it.
Yeah. Now we were there. The last time we were there, it was Halloween. So in addition to the charm of the castle, they had an overlay of Sleepy Hollow, and then you had this cool little necklace that activated all these events around the castle.
Yeah, so that's something they started playing with a year ago, right? Obviously, they borrowed that concept from Disney or other places, but the idea is they played around with the last Halloween, and then they brought it back this Halloween. Currently, it's a members only thing, but the goal is to have things like this year round that in addition to either members that guests too could experience, because there's a lot. I think there's a lot of perception out there that there is a lot of things to touch and do and explore and hidden doors and things that there really aren't necessarily there that do anything, right? Yes, there are a lot of nice exhibits and things like that, but there's not a lot of secret doors. So I think that is a step towards something like that, like finding these little hidden things.
Right. I think what's happening is the castle is having now to catch up to its image and its legend, which I think is interesting. We saw some of that stuff while we were there. I thought it was really great. I think the closest people would see is that at the Wizarding World of Harry Potter, you can buy a wand that will activate stuff all over the land, which of course is an upsell, and which is what they do best, right? But
I think where we have to counter that is because I was just down in Florida over the holidays, and what you've got is you've got the people who then focus on that, right? So then they become now, the castle is what it is, land and space wise, right? It will not get any bigger in our foreseeable future without us buying the building and a substantial influx of capital. So there are a lot of, because it originally started as a residence, there are a lot of very narrow walkways, and it's not ADA compliant in a lot of areas. And so when you now add the layer of shows breaking and all of a sudden 100 people coming out of a room and trying to move down a hallway, and you've got these other people who are focused on their little button thing and activating an event, right? It just makes it a little more challenging to do that. So it's figuring out where to put it so in the worst case scenario it's not impeding traffic.
Right. Well, shows. I'm always impressed at how good the people who work the rooms are to get the people in, get them seated, fill it as much as possible so nobody gets left behind, and then, like you said, exiting it out and getting them to the next event or whatever that is. They do a great job, and the whole time making sure nobody pulls out their cell phone and starts snapping pictures.
Yeah, I mean they have to balance that too, along with dinner, right? We do 3 fixed dinner seatings. So this last year, they for the first time really since I've been a member, they made some significant changes to the show schedules in order to help that flow, and I think they'll never be done with that. So there will be continue to make little tweaks here and there to make those flows and transitions. Because what we don't want is people going out of there and then going, well, I only saw one thing, right? I was there 6 hours, I only saw one thing. So
no, you don't want that. But then you see a lot of people there who are on some sort of Groupon something, and they've had way too much to drink, and the magic already happened, and the magician was Jack Daniels. So, but
sometimes that makes my night easier.
I'm sure.
Is this your card? Sure.
What was the first time what year was it when you first went to the castle?
I was 21. So the castle, like I said,
a couple years ago.
Yeah, a few years ago. No, I mean, like, so when I was really into magic in my teens, the juniors program there was just literally starting up, and I wasn't, probably good enough at that time to get into that. So at that point, the only time you could get into the castle, and by the way, so it's still this case, is the only time you can get into the castle if you're 21 is Saturday or Sunday brunch. And back then it was only Sunday brunch. And we lived in Orange County, so it was kind of like, I won't get up there enough. And even later on when I became an adult, I think that's what kind of kept me away for the longest time. It was the same sort of a thing, right? It's, do I, spend X $100 a year to become a member, and I'm only going to be able to get up there twice a year.
Right, right.
It's probably easier.
I do know
find a member and get me a guest pass for that once.
Right.
A year,
I do know people who that's their hangout.
Oh yeah, I mean
they're there every day. AJ is there every day.
Trust me, if I lived closer like some of these people, I probably would be there.
I know, right?
Because I'd stop by for 2 hours and go home.
It'd be very tempting to just hang out all day if you were local.
But I mean, a couple weeks ago, my son wanted to go. He had a friend in from out of town, and it was like a Thursday night, and and I left work close to 5 o'clock, and and it took me close to 3 hours to get there.
Wow.
And
oh
it's
my gosh.
That's why I don't go.
Yeah, well,
during the week.
If you don't live in LA or around LA, you have no concept of what traffic is.
Yep.
Because heavy traffic somewhere is like, oh man, I was delayed 15 minutes. No, heavy traffic means you can leave 3 hours ahead of time and still not make it. Thank you, Universal Studios.
Yeah. and also, we are, the building is the building, and it has a fixed capacity. So if you have a dinner reservation, then you are part of that number when they calculate. But if you don't, right, it's all of us members that just decide to show up on a whatever night, right? We have over 5,000 members worldwide. The capacity of the castle is a little bit over 500, right? So if
10% of your membership could
show
shut
up
the
on
place
one
down,
night, right? So to add insult to injury, I sit in traffic for 2 hours, and then I get there and told I can't get in, right? So that's why I don't spend more time up there. I get up there once a week is my goal, because the acts change every week.
I think that's great.
Saturday or Sunday.
Once a week would be, we go once every few months, and I'm just like, oh, we're going to the castle, oh my God, let's go right now. And then I got to go in costume, which was fantastic to go. Now, you're talking about the library. When we went for Halloween, what was the guy's name that we saw? The really funny guy who plays a foreign man.
Bijan,
the magician.
Bijan the magician.
He was great, fantastic guy.
Loved him.
And we saw him bopping out of the library wearing Groucho glasses with a big nose and the eyebrows. And I just was chatting him up. And as I was talking to him, I was just getting closer and closer to the library itself. Now, I'm not allowed in at all. I know that. That doesn't stop me from trying to take a peek, because I had a magician friend of mine send me a picture from inside the library, and I almost fainted because my novel is part of the fiction shelf.
Gotcha.
Which just made me giddy.
Yeah.
Because that was the goal originally, was write a book about magicians and somehow get it into the castle. So though it's never put a scrap of gold in my pocket, to quote Dickens, it does make it great that my book is available there.
Correct. And I think, again, it's a size and spacing and logistics issue, right? I don't think from at face value, we really don't have a problem with, guests walking through the library, right? Because it's, as long as they're not touching the books and whatever.
Sure.
It's a fixed space, and you've got people in there who are actually trying to read books and trying to learn, and that's why.
It seems silly, but for those of you who don't know, books about magic are normally done in a low print run. Some of them are self-published. I know this because I've tried to track down a few, and they're very expensive and very rare.
The good ones.
Yes. I've got one in my case right over there, and it's the silliest one of all, but it's Magic from the Haunted Mansion at Disneyland.
Hopefully it's still here for you when you get leave tonight. Hopefully it doesn't disappear.
I think, what did it cost? $150 at the park in the mid-'70s. It goes for well over $50 to $80 on eBay. My good friend Elizabeth gave it to me as a gift. It is one of my prized possessions, because when I was in Magic, it was in my kit.
Yeah.
Because all the tricks somehow were flavored Haunted Mansion. It's the same tricks you get in any book. Doesn't matter. But they were flavored Haunted Mansion, which to me made them that much more special.
I actually brought the first book I think I ever had, and it came as part of a little kit.
Oh, I have this book. This is from the Adams kit.
SS Adams.
Oh my God, that's great.
101 magic tricks.
Yeah.
And I got to tell you, you could probably go through here, pick stuff out that find that you could actually still do today, or some of these principles are actually really great.
Yeah, you flipped. I already saw two I remembered. One is the wobbling pencil, which I still do, and the other was the.
I do that all the time.
The other one is you hold it
all the time.
You hold up in your hand and you say, "I have 2 coins in my hand that equal 51 cents. What 2 coins do I have in my hand, Rachel?"
Wait. Let me get my brain turned on. Okay,
I have 2 coins in my hand that equal 51 cents.
Oh, yeah.
No. One of them is not a penny.
Yeah, one of them is not.
What 2 coins are in my hand?
That's impossible.
Oh, it is possible. I have a 50-cent piece and a penny.
You
I said one of them is. The other is a penny.
Uh,
Thank you, Adam. That's exactly right? That's the book I had too. That's so great.
Correct. Probably not the greatest example to be performing as a magic show, but yes.
Well, on a podcast, it's perfect.
Sure. Teach Josie that. She'll go to school on Monday. She'll get a kick out of that one.
Sure. So, what was the first big audience you performed for? What was that like?
But actually, let me back up just a second.
Okay, so you're in the womb.
Yeah, no.
Not that far back.
And I just want to back up real quick to your book comment. So, a lot of the good, what are considered the good books, right, are expensive and rare. There are a lot of good books that still come out today that are not. I will tell people, this is, in case you're listening and thinking you're going to learn magic, this isn't a Teach a Trick podcast, but I will tell people there's a book out there called The Royal Road to Card Magic. You can go find that in any magic shop, and you can actually probably usually even find it in any bookstore that still exists, right? But I mean, I want to say it's less than $10. And I got to tell you, I mean, some of my material from my little favorite set to do, you won't find it in the book, but I could tell you the origin of it and how it started. And it started as a trick from Royal Road to Card Magic. And there's another one out there, Erdnays, if you want to get into hardcore stuff. And that one's probably out there in public domain. You can pick that one up free online or for a couple of bucks. So there are gems out there. So I sometimes when I'm in magic shops and a parent will come in with their kid and ask the guy to recommend something, and I'll walk straight over to the shelf and I'll say, "Here it is, Royal Road to Card Magic." Right? I know your kid wants one of these flashy little tricks in the thing, but it's like, this is what he really needs.
Yeah. No, I was one of the kids staring at the case with like the cigarette through quarter, the bendable $50. I loved all of that stuff. I wanted it all. But you don't really need that if you're going to put an act together.
Right. And then I feel fortunate to be in the position I'm in now because I like to tell stories and leave people with a moment, whereas opposed to kids today, it does have to be trick, right? You can't do build up. You can't do, I've got a nice little story trick with a deck of cards. I can make it go 5 to 7 minutes. Young teens today, they can't do. Their friends aren't going to sit around and watch a 5-minute trick. If you've not burned something off in 10, 15 seconds, they've lost attention.
Chris Angel's taken his head off, so it doesn't compare. But for people at the castle having a good time, because we've sat down there in the lower level watching you do your whole act, and it's great because you get a drink, you take a sip, you watch you do something, and 7 minutes later, a little miracle happens. And that's what it's all about. You did one with breath mints. That was just fun. So, I love all that. We watched a guy in the close-up parlor one time. He was an older guy, like a silver fox. He reminded me of Barry from Storage Wars, And his deal was he never even hardly touched the coins that were on the table. He would tell the pretty girl that he got in the audience, take this coin, put it over here, do this. And the stuff he did was so unbelievably amazing. And he was so nonchalant about it. And at the end, somebody raised their hand before they left and said, "Hey, where are you from?" And he goes, "Oh, yeah, I'm from Las Vegas." He goes, "Well, if we go to Vegas, where can we see you?" And he goes, "The IT department of Las Vegas University. I fix computers." Yeah. It was so amazing. Here's this guy who can do all this, and he's not a professional magician, but that's the magic of the magic is you never know. There's no look to it. I know that they've tried like Chris Angel's shtick of blowing people up or whatever he does. And then David Blaine, who's fantastic, but his whole thing is like, I kind of stumbled onto this thing I'm going to do for you. I just figured out how to do this. Yes, check this out. Here's a dead fly I'm bringing back. Oh, wow. They don't have the panache that David Copperfield has. The stuff that I saw as a kid, Doug Henning, these guys that would go on TV and really go, I'm going to amaze you. And it wasn't a camera trick. And it wasn't shtick. It wasn't, the guy froze himself in ice. Whoop-de-doo. It's not magic to me.
Yeah.
And I know we're not here to slam magicians, but
No, I wouldn't. No. I have my favorites and my non-favorites.
Who was your inspiration growing up?
I would say inspiration, but when I grew up here, so magic. My influence as a magic was late '60s and early '70s. So back then there was no magic in Vegas. There was no place to go to see magic. The only time that magic would really make its way around here was so Milt Larson used to put on. Well, he still does. Puts on a show. It's a completely different sort of a thing now. It's called It's Magic. And it used to be for 1 week around Halloween. It used to be at the Wilshire Ebel Theater, big nice theater, and you dress up to go, and like the who's who of magicians from around the world would show up at this thing. So that's where I saw all my magicians.
So you saw It's Magic live?
Oh, many times.
Oh, that's fantastic.
Many times. So I saw all, Di Vernon and all these other.
Yeah. Now Di Vernon lived at the castle.
In his later years, he did. He lived there. Well, practically lived at the castle. Yeah.
Yeah, the resident magician. When I talk to a lot of magicians, he's the number one guy that they say influenced them. And Alonzo.
Vernon is considered Vernon's considered having the most influence on modern close-up magic in the world.
He would just sit right outside
they call it the Vernon's Corner.
Yeah, Vernon's Corner, and just
people would come to him, and he was quite an inspiration. He was always challenging people, but he was big on theory, right? And one of his little pet peeves was you never make fun of your audience, right? It's these there are tricks where you can make somebody. Let's say the 3-shell game, right? You got to keep track of a little ball under one of the 3 shells, right? And where is it, right? Well, they're always going to be wrong. It's a con game. It's a swindle, right? But as so many people will present it as a ha, you're wrong, right? Whereas Vernon would tell you to, where should it be, right?
Yeah,
so you're not making fun of them and not making them.
Well, it's supposed to be a magical thing, not I've been rooked. Because you can get rooked anywhere.
Correct.
But you want to see something stellar. Who was the guy that we saw Halloween night who came off like a mortician?
Oh, Rob Zabrecki?
Rob Zabrecki, that's the name I couldn't think of.
Rob Zabrecki is one of the greatest characters.
Let me tell you, I laughed for 6 days after that show. He was the one who said, it's a special night. It's my great uncle's birthday, and then he brought out an urn and put on a little party hat. Yeah. He was so amazing. And then I come to find out he was actually at Knott's, and I missed him.
Yeah. What?
He taught Elvira how to do the illusion with the therapist illusion.
Yeah.
That's where he brings an audience member up, and he says that he's been seeing a therapist, and a therapist has written on the cards activities he should do to help him feel better and more like a human. And he lets the audience member pick one of the cards. And it's the card they pick is they're going to have a hug out of 5 cards. So now they have free will to pick any card they want. And the card they pick is a hug. So as he hugs, he flips the cards around so the audience can see the other cards, and they all say stab. And it's just the funniest trick I've ever seen. And he does it so well with that character.
Rob's got a great character.
Oh, God, that makes me laugh.
Rob commits, I got to tell you. I watched him one night in the Palace, and he picked some lady in the front row, and she was from Bel Air. She had blue hair, and she wanted nothing to do with him, and he did not move on. He just stayed committed and got her up there, and it went miserably, but he had picked her and he stayed committed and he went with it.
I've seen Ed Alonzo out of all the magicians, I've seen Ed Alonso the most because obviously he works at, he's been at Knott's for years, and I've seen him hundreds of times. I've seen him pick a dud out of the audience, and he'll just look at her and go, "It's my fault. I picked you." And it's just so great. And occasionally, I've seen him escort her back to her seat and pick somebody else.
Yeah.
There are a lot of magicians will talk about that in itself, depending on what you're doing. There's certain things where I try to pick material where it doesn't really much matter who I pick. I pick material that's sort of safe. But these other stage magicians, they've got, they know where they want to go. They've got their comedy timing. So, you can go Google Matt King and go listen to one of his podcasts or interviews and whatever, and he'll talk about, where he's done it enough times, and, at the very beginning, if trick number 3, he's going to pick somebody from the audience, trick numbers 1 and 2, he's surveying
already
that
scanning.
audience.
Oh, yeah.
He's got people picked out.
You have to.
So the working pros, it is
Sure.
hard for them to pick out the right person.
I asked Ed one time about picking, because sometimes you'll see a really pretty girl and she's got her hands up and stuff, and he goes, I never go for them, because when they come up, the pretty girls are so self-conscious about looking pretty and staying pretty. He goes, I get the kind of good time girls who's maybe she's just wearing a t-shirt and tennis shoes, because she's going to come up here and come to life. And you know what? He was right 99.9% of the time. And anytime he would deviate and pick a really pretty girl, it would just be a complete dud. Easy to look at, nothing going on. Fascinating how that all goes down.
And you were talking about seeing, Ed at Knott's so many times. Getting back to one of your earlier questions, the other magic that I was exposed to a lot growing up here was at Knott's Berry Farm. Chuck Jones would appear either once or twice a year. He'd do a Christmas thing, and he'd do it in the summertime. And then also Harry Blackstone Jr. would either appear in local theaters, or he would be up at Magic Mountain. So
yeah,
my
boss was Chuck Jones' Tada girl back in the day, Julie.
Interesting.
Yeah. Now your Tada girl's here, right? You were the Tada girl.
Yes.
Elizabeth is here.
Yay!
You were the Tada girl.
I was just for a short period.
That's fantastic.
Elizabeth got cut into thirds back in
And
1979.
Boston changed uniforms for outfits.
Yeah.
So that begs the question. So we've talked about you doing card tricks, and I mentioned breath mints, and these are all up close things, because you have a really nice kit you've put together where you can, all magicians have to have a kit, because you can't tell somebody I'm a magician and then not do something.
Sure.
So, but talking about this, at what point did you do these big, cutting someone into thirds is a big scale illusion.
Sure.
That's a commitment, because I did a show at Knott's where we built a rotating saw blade and sawed a guy in half. And the gimmick was, now we knew we weren't going to fool anybody on how it was done.
Yeah.
So what we did was we did a bump on it at the end, where just when you saw the saw go through, we had a bucket of blood come out.
Gotcha. And
then chocolate pudding and entrails. And that was our thing. But I know how much that illusion cost. That was a massive illusion. And the only reason I got it in the show was the promise that I would use it 2 or 3 more years.
Yeah.
So how did you graduate to cutting somebody into thirds?
So I was always involved in arts or crafts or wood shop sort of stuff, and I had a few nicer tools at home. So when I was I was just getting out of junior high school, going into my freshman year of high school, I decided I wanted to do something big. That was one of the few times in my life I ever took classes. So I had a teacher that taught me in Whittier. I wished I could remember his name. I cannot. And he put together a show for us. So my first big show was at the Veterans Hospital down in Long Beach. It was a big stage, so everybody got to do something. And so I built this substitution trunk. It's an old effect Houdini used to do. Basically, one person gets locked, handcuffed, and tied in a bag and locked in this trunk, and the people switch places, right?
Like Metamorphosis.
Metamorphosis, correct. It's relatively inexpensive to build, right? So I got into that, and then I did okay I did a lot of Boy Scout dinners or birthday party dinners, and I was making $30 for a 30-minute show. Well, back in 1972, 1973, that was a lot of money, right? So
Sure.
that money would go back into more magic stuff, and I also had paper routes and things. So I pretty much worked my entire life since I was 10 or 12 different jobs. So I had a little bit of money out there. So after I built my substitution trunk, then in high school I was very involved in drama, so I got to use it again there, and then so I was able to build some stuff for a show I did there, and then also whenever we had the opportunity, like we did the Wizard of Oz, right? Well, we're not going to melt the witch, we'll make her disappear, and so things like that. And then the next thing I built was the Zigzag Girl, so I built that in 1979.
You built your own?
I built my own.
Oh, that's impressive.
My own.
Zigzag Girl is where you put a girl in the cabinet. It has 3 doors. You close the doors, and then you move the top and the bottom to the left, and then the middle one to the right, and she's in a zigzag. It's a great illusion.
Great.
And then her hands are always out wiggling things.
Correct.
And
Created.
Yes.
Created by Robert Harbin in 1969. The man's a genius. And back like everybody else, I built mine. I didn't have the rights to build it back then. You still do. You have to own the book, and the book gives you the rights to build it, and the book gives you the rights to perform it, right? So I really had no right to build it or to demonstrate.
Right, but this is pre-internet, so nobody knows what you're up to.
Yes, I've since purchased the book, so I now am a legal. Actually, a long little side story here. So one of my mentors growing up was a man named Sammy McKay. Lived in Garden Grove, an older gentleman, nicest guy in the world. I go down to his house every once in a while on a Sunday and sit with him for hours. And Sammy is the one that gave me my doves, and gave me access to his library, and he let me borrow his Robert Harbin book, which had come out which had the plans for the Zigzag Girl in there. So I borrowed that book, and I nicely made a copy. Back in those days, you used to have to go down to Thrifties and spend 5 cents a page to get your thing, and you have to lay the book. But I was very good about it. And a friend of mine asked if he could borrow the book, and he borrowed the book from me. Brought it back to me about a week later, and the binding was all trashed. He had pushed this book down hard to get his copies. So I remember having to return that book to Sammy, and I was so ashamed and embarrassed. I finally basically just returned the book and never saw Sammy again. I was just so embarrassed and ashamed. And when I became and so later on, a friend of mine, when I started working at Walt Disney Imagineering back in the 80s, a guy I became friends with there, he was a member of the Magic Castle, and we were talking about history, and I brought up Sammy, and he goes, "Oh, I know Sammy. Sammy used to work in the library, and Sammy passed away last year. A lot of Sammy's stuff made it into the library." And so when I became a member, I asked to see the book, and they had it in a glass case because it's a very rare book. And I remember seeing the book and just looking at it, and the binding was all broken. That's
awful. That's the book your friend ruined.
Tears, right? I mean, I was responsible for it, and so
how weird.
So a few years later, I was keeping my eye on. I could be wrong on this. I believe there are 500 copies of the book, right? So pretty much everybody who's, they're out there, and there's some counterfeits, there's ways to look at it, and I found one, and it's by no means a cheap book, right? It was very, very expensive for me to purchase this book, but I purchased this book, which was in pristine condition, and took it to the castle and exchanged it for the one I had damaged. So the castle now has a pristine copy of the book.
Oh, that's great.
And I have the one that I ruined.
So you made it right.
And I did. I paid it forward so Sammy would be proud. And then I went and spent a few $100s and got the binding fixed on the book. So it's the highlight of my personal collection.
Oh, that's fantastic. That's a great story. It's not every day you can right or wrong from that long ago.
Right.
It just doesn't work. Life doesn't work out that way. So you were in Imagineering.
I did. I started in I worked at Disneyland first, just while I was in college, and then I worked there for a few years, and I had an opportunity to transfer up to Imagineering. I'm sure everybody who's listening to that knows what Imagineering is. They're the design build division of the Disney company, responsible for back then the theme parks, but now it's a little bit beyond that.
That's everything.
Yeah.
And people would be probably shocked to find out that magicians are in high demand for those kind of jobs, because a lot of the stuff that was integrated into theme park rides came from magicians.
Absolutely. I mean,
fooling the eye.
I don't know if he's still on staff there, but there's a gentleman named Jim Steinmeier. He's probably the greatest living creator of magic. Pretty much everybody from Doug Henning on, if you go watch Illusions, there's a better chance that, 75% of those illusions on stage are Jim Steinmeier creations. So he was on staff at Imagineering for a long time. I think from a pure magical standpoint, I think one of the most famous things he advised or created was Roger Rabbit cartoon spin at the very end, where you exit through the hole.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
that's a
portable hole.
Yeah, the portable.
It's a fantastic illusion.
Yeah,
I don't think people even notice it anymore.
It goes by so quickly.
But
it's a beautiful illusion.
When that ride opened, I remember going through it and getting off, going, I have to ride that again, because I didn't catch how they did it, and I need to know. That's a fantastic illusion.
Yeah, so a lot of theme parks play with a lot of illusions like that, right? I mean, obviously the one that comes to everybody's mind in the Haunted Mansion is the Pepper's Ghost. I mean, if you go to the library and read about Pepper's Ghost, it's not truly a Pepper's Ghost from the way Pepper's Ghost was presented originally, but conceptually it is a variation of Pepper's Ghost. So that's out there. So there's a lot of. Actually, there used to be a department in Imagineering, and they used to call it Illusioneering, and it was just all about coming up with these special effects and stuff. I mean, Knott's, you guys have Mystery Lodge, Spirit Lodge.
Mystery Lodge. Spirit Lodge was at the Vancouver Expo.
Which was actually Disney designed it, or BRC, Disney was involved in it for the Vancouver, and then it went to Knott's later on. Same thing. It's a variation of Peppers. You don't find as much of it anymore, but you used to when you'd go in Florida a lot. I can remember in Horizons and a lot of these other things.
Everything's digital now.
A lot of variations of Pepper's Ghost.
Yeah. Everything's digital now. It's just easier to do it digitally. But no, when Bob Rogers, the BR of BRC, when he's a good friend of mine. He's one of my mentors. I respect him more than just about anybody on the planet, next to Milt Larsen. I mean, and they're heroes. He was telling me when they opened Spirit Lodge at the Vancouver Expo in 1986 that every magician in the world came to see it. Mm-hmm. That he personally welcomed every notable person in magic, because Pepper's Ghost had not been built on that scale before. Yeah. And they all wanted to see it. And it didn't disappoint. Spirit Lodge was revolutionary. And it's weird that it took 8 years from the expo to actually see it installed at Knott's.
Yeah, Disney does that a lot. They'll come up with things and then they can't decide what to do with them later. But the thing was, the interesting part about that too was, although Disney used the concept in so many places, it was when they did when Spirit Lodge was done, it was really the first time in modern history of application that incorporated a live actor, which goes back to the original way of Pepper's Ghost. It was a live person. It was not.
That's how you sell it.
It was not a people talk about holograms. It's not a in the mansion. It's not a hologram, but it's it gives the illusion of an object floating in air that's not there.
The problem is that people my age were shown holograms in the late 70s. And there was even a couple of toy lines like Visionaries that involved holograms. And we were under the impression that holograms were going to change the world. And they didn't.
Yeah.
And they don't even use holograms much anymore.
Weird.
But it's such...
I never thought about that. Like, yeah, holograms for a while were like the cool new thing. You
Yeah.
know, you go to the mall, the little kiosk would have all the little hologram necklaces.
Yeah.
And
They didn't...
rings
They became
and
too
eyeballs.
expensive.
It's so cool.
There was even the McDonald's across from Disneyland, circa 1986, 87, during the EO Star Tours years. If you went over there, the entire restaurant had hologram displays.
Yeah.
And it was the future, holograms. And then I think it crested and it died with the Black Cauldron. Because the Black Cauldron was supposed to have holograms in the theater that walked off the screen. When the Army of the Dead attacked, they were supposed to come off the screen and walk down the aisle. And when I read that in Starlog, I was ready. And when you went and saw the movie, nothing like that happened.
Yeah. I mean, and like modern days, you'll hear people talking about like when they had Tupac at Coachella, or for those people who've seen Michael Jackson
hologram is a catch-all
thing, right?
We have friends that go to a concert. I don't know if you've heard of her in the anime world, but her name is Miku, and she is not a real person.
Yeah.
But she's huge.
Huge.
Her
Right.
concerts sell out.
But
They've gone to all of them.
if you polled the 30,000 people coming out,
Image on the stage.
29,000 would say the word hologram.
Correct.
And it's not a hologram.
It's not a hologram.
No.
It's really just a different way of presenting the concept of Pepper's Ghost.
Yeah,
it's not a hologram.
Yeah, no, it's fantastic though.
Yeah.
But if it gets people excited, have you seen Phantom Manor at
Euro Disney?
Isn't it Euro, Austin?
Disneyland Paris
Where's
now,
Phantom Manor?
Yeah.
Disneyland Paris.
Is it Mystic Manor?
It's Mystic Manor.
Mystic Manor. Have you seen that with the
I've
monkey?
seen some of the online stuff. Yes, I've not physically been there.
I saw it online. We've watched it a dozen times. That's state of the art with that kind of stuff, and it's astounding what it looks like. So we were talking before the show started about movies. What movies about magicians do you gravitate towards? What TV shows? Because I had a whole bunch.
I don't watch much of the newer stuff on TV.
I'm old. New stuff sucks.
Yeah.
Go to the old stuff.
There are some good stuff on. I mean, I liked when they did Wizard Wars. I liked that, right?
Yeah. Fool Us.
I liked Fool Us, right? Fool Us was great, right? I mean, Penn and Teller, the Bad Boys of Magic, but I got to tell you, I love Penn and Teller.
I was going to ask you about your opinion on Penn and Teller.
The Magic community loves Penn and Teller.
Because I'll tell you, I discovered Penn and Teller on David Letterman.
No, I can go back farther than that.
Well, I had a VCR, a Betamax, and I would tape their performances, and I would not erase it till I figured out how they did everything. I watch it over and over and over again.
Yeah, Penn and Teller. So I want to say it was somewhere around 85, 86, 87. We used to have these things called newspapers. So the LA Times had this calendar section, which would have all your entertainment sort of stuff in there, shows and concerts and things like that. And that's funny. You couldn't even some of these musical acts today that have to modify their names. Like the Butthole Surfers, right? In the calendar section, it would just be the Beehole Surfers.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
But anyways, there was all these ads for Penn and Teller, the Bad Boys of Magic. Penn and Teller, the Bad Boys of Magic. And it was in this little small theater in L.A. So went down there one afternoon, caught the matinee, and this theater couldn't have held 100 people. And we start out with one of their classic effects, Casey at the bat. So Penn, they put Teller in a straitjacket, and he's hung up from a rope. And the rope is tied to a chair from a pulley, right? Mm-hmm. And Penn sits on the chair and reads Casey at the bat. And Teller has to escape from the straitjacket prior to him finishing it because Penn's going to leap up at the very end and Teller falls to the ground if he hasn't escaped by then. Well, so he starts out at a nice normal pace, and as he gets further along, right, he starts speeding his voice up and up and up and up and up, and so
he's going. Hang on, folks, it's got a twist ending. All right, it's brilliant.
So that was okay. I'm my interest is now piqued, and then they went on and proceeded to do a card trick, right? So Penn's on stage talking the whole time, and Teller's out in the audience, and he's doing all the work with the cards, and Penn's up there, and he's going, okay, now Teller he's doing a false shuffle, he's forcing, and he's calling out these legitimate names of moves in Magic. Now, lay people in the audience aren't going to get it, right? But me as a magician, I'm going, like, he's actually calling out the real
He's telling
names
you what they're doing
of the moves
Yeah.
he does, right? And Teller's getting more and more frustrated, and he brings the cards back on the stage of the table, and he's got a knife, and Teller's kind of moving the cards around, and Penn's got the knife, and Teller gets all frustrated, and he slams the knife down, and Teller lifts his arm up, and the knife blade is sticking out of his hand with the selected card, and blood is running down his arm. And I stopped and I said, this is the coolest thing I've ever seen in my life.
Yeah,
But
the one I saw was SNL 1986, I think it was, and it was a card trick with Teller in a water tank, and it was locked with a padlock, and they weren't going to give Penn the key till he picks the correct card. Well, of course he doesn't, and Teller dies.
Yep.
And at the end, he goes, I'm Penn, this was my partner Teller, and they flip Teller around, and in his mask is the card. And that's one of those ones I watched over, and it took forever to figure it out. Even with, just the camera doesn't stop. And the movements are so good. But
there's a story about that, though, too, that you can go find an interview on that one did not go exactly as they wanted it to.
No, so Teller almost really died.
Teller almost really did die in that. But they owe a lot. I mean, I would tell people, if you can only see one show in Vegas right now, it's go see Penn and Teller anytime they are there.
My kids and I saw it, and my jaded kids said it was the best show they'd ever seen.
And once or twice a year, they will add a new effect that they've worked on for years and years and years. And where I was going with that was, Teller did this thing with my moment was with the card and the blood thing, right?
Yeah.
And so that was my moment. And so when I took my kids several years ago, the new effect that I saw them doing that time was a sawing in half. And so they brought a girl up on stage and sawed her in half, and then went on to explain it, right? And then in the midst of explaining it, of course, something goes wrong, and the blade comes down, and there is blood everywhere.
Yeah, we saw that one too.
And this girl's entrails are all over the place, right? And it's funny because I was talking. They've always actually been out after the shows talking to you, which I think is a great thing.
They don't leave till everybody who wants a picture has got one.
And
we couldn't believe it.
I remember seeing them once at the Wiltern, and actually Penn was in the lobby at intermission talking to people.
Really?
Yeah, absolutely.
I saw Penn and Teller. The first time I saw him live was at Universal Studios for Halloween,
Horror Nights,
1992. Yeah. And the finale they did, I've never seen them do it since. It was they were stripped down to like pillowcases.
Their rose routine.
And they would pretend to march, and blood, and it was amazing.
I remember seeing that in Vegas, and all these blue hairs coming out of the thing, and thinking they had no idea what they just saw. But back to the sawing in half thing, I remember. So we're talking to them after the show, and I had my kids with me, and I was talking to Penn, which I've talked to Penn before, but and anyways, I was telling us, hey, my Penn and Teller moment was back in 1987 when you guys did the card thing, and I said, this is my kids' first exposure to you. And I said, they're a little bit jaded. And that thing with the sawing it out, that was their Penn and Teller moment. But,
yeah.
I mean, they will tell you too that a lot of the things they do, things like that sawing in half, is owed to an homage to a great magician called Ricciardi. So Google Ricciardi on. There's a lot of videos out there on YouTube. They're not the greatest quality, but Ricciardi was a genius. Ricciardi would do a variation of the buzzsaw illusion where a person lays on the table, this giant buzzsaw cuts in half, and there's no boxes over the girl. And, Ricciardi he'd pump like the smell of alcohol into the audience, and he would use his daughter for this, and this was right before intermission. And so, you've got this image of this, virginal young girl in white, right? And he cuts her in half, and the blood is just spraying everywhere, right? And as they break for intermission, they invite the audience to come up and walk around the table, right?
Yeah.
And they go to intermission, and you never see this girl again. That was like the genius of Ricciardi. So Penn and Teller will be the first to tell you a lot of what they do is in an homage to Ricciardi.
Did you ever see Penn and Teller get killed?
Unfortunately, yes.
Now, see, I had it on Laserdisc, and I used to watch it a lot. It's not a very good movie.
I would agree.
But it is it's hard to believe it exists because it's so weird.
Yeah.
Because it's all over the place in tone. At one point, it turns to black and white, and Penn is going, "Journal of the Damned." It's a strange movie.
If they were to pitch that today, they would come up to the realization that probably not the best movie to make, right?
No. And the best part is that, spoiler alert, if you could spoil a movie 26 years old, they die at the end, and my favorite line is, the camera's pulling away from their apartment into the sky, and it's playing I Started a Joke that started the whole world crying, and you hear Penn go, "Oh, well, that's it, folks. We said we were going to get killed, we got killed. If we didn't get killed, you'd all be upset. And just so you know, this isn't us going to heaven. We killed ourselves, which in any religion sends you straight to hell. So see you later." It's just so subversive, and something just, it clicked in me how crazy it was. And my kids latched on to the have you ever seen them do the Bill of Rights thing in their show? And I had to buy them the metal Bill of Rights, which you're supposed to wear to the airport.
Yep.
And when it sets off the alarm, you're supposed to say to them, "Oh, I'm sorry, my Bill of Rights where it says you can't have illegal search and seizure set that off. Let me set this right here." Right, guys? Yeah, they just thought that was the greatest.
They are both highly intelligent. I know a good friend of mine who's no longer with us. He used to be an editor for a computer magazine, so Penn used to write an article on that. And, with Penn, it's like pretty much what you see is what you get. I mean, that is not a character, that is him.
No, he's very honest. And cool guy.
Teller, Teller will talk to you after the show. Teller can really speak, and Teller is
his wallet.
Sorry, Luna's showing the Bill of Rights made of metal.
Teller is super intelligent. He used to be a Latin teacher, right? So it's like not everybody can do that, right? So right off the bat, but
have you ever seen him?
I'm sorry, it's really funny because there's a joke within the magic community about Penn and Teller Fool Us. John Archer came and lectured to us. He was one of the winners on the British television show, and he's a super funny guy too. And he's like, "Let's be honest, you got to fool Teller, right?" So.
Oh yeah, of course, and good luck. I've only seen it a few times on that show.
Yeah, but it's like, I know a lot of people who have been on, I know pretty much everybody who's been on the American version of the show. And, they're smart enough to realize that, that's not what the show is about to them, right? The show to them is about getting magic on TV and hopefully good magic on TV, right? But if you go to the networks and say, "Hey, I want to put a magic show on TV," the networks are not interested. But you say, "But I got this. It's a competition show." Oh, sounds great.
Yeah, sure.
Right. So,
yeah,
and
thankfully
there are a lot of people on there who are really not there to fool them, and that's not the premise, right? There are some people who, I know people who legitimately fool them and not legitimately fool them, and it's funny sometimes because there's a gentleman on there who I have a high respect for. He's super creative. His name is Paul Vigil, and he was just at the castle not too long ago. And he did this great routine, and they're like, and they know Paul, right? And the thing is, it's like, now normally that would have fooled us had we not, bought your book 10 years ago, which that effect is published in. So that's kind of like, to me, that's kind of like a gray area because it's like, really, he did fool them. And there's other people on there who's like, that fooled you, really? So,
What I do like, though, is that in this day and age, that the show doesn't end with Penn and Teller going, "Here's how he did it."
Correct.
Because then I would be crushed.
But the American version, it's really funny if you understand magic, right? The British version didn't do it so much, but the American version, right, without giving too much away, but when Penn talks, he'll use certain words that magicians will pick up on, right? And so, like, he may talk something about Star Wars or something like that, right? When he's talking about the Force, right? So it's like, what he's basically saying is, you force the card, right? So it's the American version, though. If you go back and watch some of those episodes, which are replaying, and by the way, there will be a new another season of that. When Penn talks to them, he'll throw out, if you'll hear these weird words that go, that was an odd choice of words, or
it's very calculated,
or somebody will, for those of you who want to go Google, right? He made, I can't remember who the magician was. I think it might have been even on the British show when he talked about, one day we were out to lunch, and for those of you who understand magic, you may pick up on that reference. The normal people would not, but it was like, to a magician, it's like, wow, okay, he just completely explained.
He's telegraphing it.
Explained the method, right? A magician would know exactly what he's talking about, but a person, it's like, this is part of his normal conversation. It seemed to be legitimate.
Well, I think that's great. That preserves the mystery for those who like to be, mystified. Did you ever watch Penn and Teller's show on Showtime BS?
I've watched a few of those. I think it's one of those time constraints. I think if the subject interested me, right? I mean, I can only watch so much TV in a week. I should probably go back and watch them.
Their episode on PETA was one of the finest pieces of television I've ever seen, because they destroyed them in that, 30, 40 minutes. It was unbelievable. Some of those episodes were so good.
I like that show. I miss it.
The one about vaccinations was used during last summer's nonsense about...
Yeah, I saw that online a lot.
Do we own that on DVD?
I used to. I don't think we have them anymore, but I can pick them up. They're fantastic. And they basically destroy and debunk everything.
Oh yeah, they're pretty good about they're good friends with James Randi, so they're on that whole thing about debunking psychics. I mean, they do a beautiful book test, sort of a psychic effect in their show, but he out and out and tells you, listen, I'm using tricks, I'm doing cold reading, hot reading, right? It's like, I have no problem with mentalism as long as people are, up front saying, hey, listen, I'm an entertainer. Right.
But if you're out there saying, I'm talking to your dead mother, we got a problem. And I've been to a Sylvia Brown show. I was disgusted.
It's
all those sad people.
I wanted to believe so bad. His mom had just passed, and
I
needed that moment in my life. I realized now is ridiculous, but at that moment, Jennifer and I were like, "Oh, we're going." And she's gonna.
But they're so bad. They're like, you there in the dog shirt.
We got you to go with us.
I'm sensing. Does the name Freddy mean something to you? My mom loved Freddy Krueger. Yes, your mother. Yes, your mother. It's exactly how it works. It makes me ill.
Sometimes it would fit really good though.
Yeah, really. I can give you any number of books to read on that. But a friend of mine at the castle, she had just gone this week or so ago to see John Edwards, and I'm like,
oh no!
You remember the castle? Seriously, there are published accounts of
charlatan,
how fake this guy is, and whatever.
Preying on people and their memories of their dead loved ones might be the worst thing I've ever seen.
And what I tell her is, listen, I truly believe that there is the possibility that people have psychic powers and can do certain things, or whatever, but they're not asking for money to talk to your dead grandma, right?
Well, how much?
Like the people who teach, right? There are people out there who have a gift that like to teach, and there's no money in that, right? They do it for whatever, right?
No.
Why is it in the history of the world there's not a single person out there with psychic powers that is helping people for free? The only people who are helping people out are charging you to talk to your dead relatives. Why is that? Right?
Exactly.
Connect the dots.
How much is the check in James Randi's wallet?
Yeah, it's $100,000 million. Who knows?
Well, for a long time it was $10,000, and it was if you could prove psychic ability, he would sign the check over to you.
Right.
And when he went on the Carson show back in the day, and who did he take down? He took down Uri Geller, right?
Oh yeah, that was his big battle back in the 70s.
Yeah,
Uri Geller.
and he said the money's safe as can be. It's not going anywhere. Nobody has psychic powers. Look at Houdini. Houdini spent the last part of his life debunking everybody, and on his deathbed told his wife, look, if there really is an afterlife, I will come back and say this to you.
Yeah.
And then they had a code word, which we don't know, because it's never been repeated.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I can't remember the word, but she best released it after, like, I think it was 10 years of trying.
It was hello. Nobody in all the years got hello. Ridiculous.
Yeah.
What else? Do you remember a TV show called, it starred Hal Linden and Frank Morgan, and it was called Black's Magic. Yes, I loved Black's Magic. They were like, one was a retired magician, one was a current magician, and they solved murders every week.
Yeah. My big one was Bill Bixby, the magician.
Oh, yeah, well, because it was at the Magic Castle.
Bill lived at the Magic Castle. But the thing was about that was, that was Mark Wilson, right? Mark Wilson was the guy behind that. So Mark's the one that provided all the illusions. Mark is the guy who trained Bill Bixby, and
Bixby copied his hair, right? Yeah. I mean, they looked exactly alike.
Mark is, God bless, Mark is still with us. Mark is on the board of trustees at the castle, and Mark has done more to legitimize magic on TV than anybody else in the world, which is why some people out there have the disdain for the Chris Angels and whoever, right? Because Mark fought so hard to get magic accepted on TV. But, the thing with the magician and Mark, and getting, my OCD connecting the dots back here, right? Like, Mark did the World's Fair, right? So Mark had a bunch of stuff with magic effects in these pavilions, right? And so, Mark made more doing corporate magic. I mean, he had his first big show as the Magic Land of Alakazam. Then he went on to do the Magic Circus, and that was big back in the 70s. Boy, it was the Magic Circus was the TV show to watch because Mark had a different illusion every single week. And that was the beauty about Mark, was he said between the Magic Land of Alakazam and the Magic Circus, it's like he had to come up with new illusions every single week. And it was like he had great people working for him. Alan Wakeling, John Gahn. John Gahn is, in my opinion, the top magic builder in the world. Nobody listening to this, I'm sure, has ever heard of John Gahn, but he is, if you can afford a John Gahn illusion, right, it is some of the greatest work of art. And he restores old magic stuff, right? Like he has Robert Houdin's mechanical man called Antonio Diavolo. It's just this little mechanical man that gets on a trapeze bar and rotates, right? And it's like, you look at this thing, and it's simply all a watch movie.
John Gahn's still with us, right?
Oh, yeah.
I think I met him.
Nicest guy.
I think I met him with AJ.
He comes out about once a year. Every couple of years they do this thing called Magic History Conference. And, it's a 10-year waiting list to get on there. I'll probably never make it into there. And they go out and find these old illusions from like 100 years ago. And some of them are published, right? So they know exactly how it works. Others are no documentation and sometimes sketchy whether it was ever actually performed.
Right.
It's documented.
Or if it's just legend.
The Indian rope trick, right?
Right.
Where they
gangs
up. It's legendary in documentation, but nobody's sure it was ever actually performed.
The Penn and Teller, what was it called? Magical Mystery Tour.
Oh.
They went in search of the Indian rope trick and they never saw it. So the closest they got was the carving on the wall of the first ever appearance of the cup and balls. So
John goes out and basically is part of a team, Jim Steinmeier and Mike Caveney, and they go research this stuff and they build it and they present it, and then we have the privilege of one or two of those things making their way to the Magic Castle. This current week, we're getting this thing called The Birth of a Pearl that was performed, but John did this thing about 3 or 4 years ago, last presented by Houdini in 1928, I want to think, called Goodbye Winter. And it was just a very simple illusion with 3 tables, just very simple looking tables, nothing magical about these tables, one slightly smaller than the next, stacked on top of each other, and a girl comes out and she gets into space on top of table number 1, underneath table number 2, and they put a little covering over that and a puff of smoke, and she disappears. And they did it on the castle stage, so I'm aware of what the castle stage can do and what it can't. And it's like, I'm a little bit jaded. I've got a lot of history. I've read a lot. So I'm seldom fooled. I'm often impressed, but seldom fooled. And I saw this thing, and I just scratched my head. And I talked to John after the show, and I said, I have not been fooled by a stage illusion since I was 12 years old. So congratulations, because I literally have no idea.
That's the ultimate compliment, right?
You did that.
I was going to ask you if there's any illusions that fooled you.
I can go down the list. There's not much. I can remember seeing Siegfried and Roy. One of the first times I saw, they had introduced a new effect.
I am Siegfried. I am Roy.
Glass case, and a girl's inside the case, and they drop a curtain, and the curtain drops again. There's a tiger inside, and I just scratched my head, right? And I'm not really sure beyond that, and the John Gone piece that he did. Like I said, I'm just not fooled by. The Siegfried and Roy piece, I got it after they did it, right? But it was like when I first saw it,
yeah.
But there'll be times when I'm looking at something and going, I can't believe that's. I know what I'm seeing. I can't believe I'm actually seeing it.
To write
it's a little, when you got these big stage things, right? It's it's a little bit easier to conceptualize, right? Deck of cards or coins or whatever, you've got these preconceived notions in your mind of what a card is or what a coin is, and once you've got somebody locked into that, right, then you can play with their mind a little bit, right? But it's like, and it's kind of why I do close up now. It's easier to carry around, and it's just a hobby to me. But when somebody sees one of these big stage illusions, right? Well, I don't know exactly how it was done, but it's a big box and it's 20 feet away from me or whatever. Versus when we're all sitting at a table, it's like, but I picked that card, and that's my signature. And whatever. This leaves,
and now it's in an orange.
It leaves more into their mind versus, well, yeah. I know you didn't really. I know she didn't really disappear, but
Right, but when
some of these explanations you'll hear are just like beyond the laws of physics, right?
Right, but when David Copperfield made the Statue of Liberty disappear, the bar was upped.
Exactly.
And people have to come up with bigger, better, crazier things.
I wish I could see that. I can remember. I was me and a friend of mine went and saw Stephen Wright, an up-and-coming Stephen Wright at the comedy.
Stephen Wright
at the comedy club.
I bought a decaffeinated coffee table
wasn't the Improv. What's the Comedy Store?
Comedy Store.
Yeah. And that was the same night. I didn't have a VCR back then, and I missed it. So, I can't remember the exact story, but you were talking about something earlier, and you recounted your version of seeing this trick. And it's sort of like, I know what you saw, and your telling of that version is not exactly what you saw, right? So it's sort of the same thing that all my friends are saying, oh, the Statue of Liberty, he did this and this and this. And I'm going, well, you know what? Without seeing it, I can't really tell you.
Because you've watched it
your
since.
Opinion, I've seen it since, right? And it's a Jim Steinmeier idea, right? And it's been used many times. If you ever saw the Disney special Magic at the Magic Kingdom, when they vanished the castle.
Yeah, it's the same thing. Yeah,
Franz Ferrari uses that concept.
Penn and Teller do it with a tank out in the desert one time, and you're looking through like a frame, and that's the whole shtick. Yeah, because it's what you said. Without giving it away, it's you've got to give them something an illusion that big. You got to give them something that their eyes can latch onto, and in that case, it's the ornate frame that you're looking through.
But in all fairness, though, getting back to the magic on TV, right? In that case, the people who were in that audience watching the Statue of Liberty disappear were truly fooled.
Sure.
As opposed to, those of us sitting at home, we may not have seen exactly what we wanted to see, but the people who were sitting there were truly
They believed
fooled,
it.
as opposed to some of the stuff that you may see on Mind Freak that, trust me, if you saw, just use this as an example, if you were there and you saw Chris floating over the Luxor, right? Nobody that was there that night was fooled.
Right. Yeah. No, I get that. Yeah, no. You remember those Magic's Greatest Secrets Revealed? Did you watch any of those?
I've watched them all. And
Me too.
It's really funny because in some cases, you can find the Zigzag Girl on there, right?
Yeah.
And but it's funny because they'll, in some cases they'll give a little piece of it, but not enough. And in other cases, I'm watching this and I'm going, I know a lot of magic, and it's like, that's not a real trick. You made that trick up just to expose it.
Right.
That trick has never been performed in the history of magic. You made a trick up just to perform it on the show and explain it.
Is it the Prestige where somebody says, if you tell them how it's done, they're going to hate you?
I tell people, I was just at the castle.
You don't want to know how it's done.
That's what I tell people. I was just at the castle the other night. I tell people, you don't want to know.
No.
Right? It's
like, and I can pinpoint the moment that happened to me, and it was on that stupid show where they brought an elephant out and put it behind two gates that had holes in it, and the elephant disappeared. And it's a beautiful illusion because you know how slow elephants move. You know that it wasn't a trap door. You didn't pull it out the back. And when they show you how it's done, I wanted to throw something at the TV because I was happier not knowing. I liked having that magic in my life.
Yeah.
And then you can't ever unknow it.
Correct.
And that sucks.
Yeah.
And I tell my kids that's a metaphor for growing old. Because once you grow old, you don't get to go back. It's over.
And Siegfried, and I've heard this story. I don't know if there's any truth to the story, but I've heard this story that he presented something one night. He presented something. I don't think it was let's say it was the Zigzag, right? But I don't think that was exactly it. And the next night, Lance Burton, it wasn't part of his normal show, but Lance decided to bring it out. And the next night, Lance did it in his show. And all these people were going, oh, but that's clearly not the way we just saw last night, even though it was.
Yeah.
Right? And I've seen great examples of that. Like the linking rings. Probably anybody who's ever dabbled in magic.
That's the first.
Right?
The first items in the kit.
I bought my first set of linking rings, my first set of Adams linking rings at Knott's Berry Farm, back when they had the magic shop in the Gypsy Camp.
Oh, yeah.
I can remember walking. I didn't even get out of the park and opening up the box and taking the rings out. And the one was linked. And I'm like, it was like a magical moment to me. And everybody who's had these things, and I've seen people, in the close-up room, and somebody, you'll see a magician on stage doing the rings, and they'll do less than 8 rings, or the people who do these little tiny mini rings. And I've heard people talking, and they're going, yeah, I used to have those rings when I was a kid, but clearly those are not the same.
Oh, right. No,
those are not the same rings I had.
Yeah.
Right? Those are completely different.
But here's the thing, and you'll probably agree with this 100%, is that when you get into magic, when you start to watch people, you're watching their interpretation. And that makes all the difference.
Correct.
Because in my novels, I've borrowed magic from every decade since magic began, and I had to come up with new ways to present it so it feels original. And that's what every magician is really up against.
Yep.
And the linking rings is a perfect example of that.
Yep. Yeah, I brought a little picture here, which doesn't great game, but you can guys can Google Adams Abracadabra. Probably the first magic set I ever bought when I was a kid, right?
Look at that.
And this thing has, ironically, the 3 shells and peas in there, which I don't think at that time I ever did, and now it's like a staple of my act.
I did this one a lot.
The ball and vase?
The ball and vase, yeah.
So that's where I was going with the story was a couple of years ago, David Regal, who's a great television writer, great magician. For those of you who have seen the Michael Carbonaro, the Carbonaro Effect, if you've not seen it, go seek it out. It's on, I think, True TV. It's coming back for another season. It's like candid camera with magic, right? And Michael gets slammed a lot for cutting away and things like that. But again, it's the kind of thing where the person there is getting fooled, and it's beautiful magic stuff. And David Regal is the number one guy behind that. And David always, when he's having the close-up room at the castle, just always delivers. He came out and he used that little crappy plastic Adams ball and vase, and he made it a great trick in the close-up room. So it doesn't have to be expensive props. It's how you.
It's all the presentation. It's in the pattern.
How you tell. And I mean, I spend a lot of time waiting in line at the castle for shows, and people talk to me and they'll say, "Well, are you fooled?" And I'm like, "No, not usually, right? But I'm impressed, right? It's sort of like the analogy I always use is you go to a concert, right? You watch a person play the guitar. They don't make that. You don't say, when they hit that string, how does it make that noise, right? You appreciate how well they play it.
Sure. Yeah.
And if you play the guitar, you know that person is good or bad, right? So I go and I watch somebody and appreciate how good they present.
Oh yeah, that's what it's all about, And at the castle, I've seen the gamut from not too good, up and comer, to I'm completely amazed at how great it was, or different. Bijan, the magician, was hysterical. Yeah. Most of the stuff he did, I've seen a million times. Doesn't matter. Totally in the presentation, and that's how much fun you where it really gets fun.
But he also did, his little thing with the tea bag, right?
Yeah, the tea bag was great.
That was a top-notch routine, right?
Yeah.
Just take the character away, just present that trick with no character. That was a great effect.
Yeah. Rachel was the recipient of that. Do you remember that at all?
Yes. I liked him. He was good.
Have you seen celebrity magicians? You've seen AJ.
AJ, I love him.
You've seen AJ, Neil Patrick Harris, Ed Alonzo, Jason Alexander.
I've seen probably pretty much every. That's the beauty of growing up and being here and seeing all those It's Magics and spending a lot of time in Vegas and these other things and going to the castle every single week, right? I mean, I've seen probably everybody out there.
Have you seen Harry Anderson?
I saw Harry Anderson years and years and years ago.
I idolized Harry Anderson when he was on Cheers before Night Court.
Harry Anderson
Harry Anderson. That right now. I'm having a moment. I'm like the guy from Night Court, and Elizabeth's over here going.
Because he opened a magician shop in New Orleans.
Harry Anderson is a fantastic magician.
I had no idea.
Harry Anderson started a couple of years ago coming to the castle again for his birthday. So he came.
What date is that? Let me write it down.
Can we put that on our calendar?
I can't.
My kids are obsessed with Harry Anderson.
You have to Google it. So a couple of years ago, he decided to come to the castle, and he wanted to just do one show in the parlor for his guests. Right? So they talked him into doing a whole night's worth of shows, so he could have the one show to his thing. And he lectured. Great lecture. And then the second year he did, I think this last year he did close-up and
get out of here
and the parlor, right? But his lectures are great. He'll tell the story about he owes the Magic Castle, right? He was performing on stage at the castle. And people saw him there, and that's how he ended up getting Night Court, which turned into Saturday Night Live.
Yeah.
Everything
October 14th. We're coming for you, Harry.
All right. He did an illusion. Have you seen him where he brings something up for the audience, and he hands him a glass of water, and he says, "Do what I do." And he holds the glass up, he brings it down. He holds the glass up, he brings it down. He takes a drink, holds the glass up, brings it down, and then puts the water back in the cup. It's brilliant.
He used to do it with his ex-wife. He used to do a great thing where there was a challenge thing where she gets tied to a chair. She was a little petite little girl, and she gets tied to a chair with ropes, and he's in straight jacket. It's a competition, right? Well, she starts beating him, right? So he's like knocking the chair over.
Oh, that's
very
great.
misogynistic. It wouldn't play well today, but
and he would he did once where he brings somebody up and he's going to do a card trick, and he hands him a deck of cards that can't be opened. And I just thought that was great too. He goes, "What are you doing? Come on, keep." And he would go. Finally, they get it open. They have to rip it open. He goes, "I want you to mix the deck." Okay, mix the deck. So he brings out a egg beater. He goes, "Mix." He's turning around, and he's got a ship, and he goes, "The deck." Oh, it's brilliant. He was so funny. And then he had part of his patter was he would ask him all these questions, and it would end with, if it takes a chicken and a half, a day and a half to lay an egg and a half, how long will it take a monkey with a wooden leg to kick all the seeds out of a dill pickle? He goes, "See, you don't know, and now you're ready for magic." And I was mesmerized enough by that to memorize it. And we're talking 30-something years ago.
Your mind is crazy.
It's crazy,
You
right?
asked me a question about yesterday, so I was like, floored I couldn't remember it.
This is why people tune in. What will he dig out of his brain next?
Exactly.
If it takes a chicken and a half, a day and a half to lay an egg in half, how long will it take a monkey with a wooden leg to kick all the seeds out of a dill pickle? See, you don't know. And that's Harry Anderson in a nutshell. And I used to watch Night Court religiously because he would sometimes do magic on it. And that's where you learned about Mel Torme.
That's to me, that's the added bonus of becoming a member of the Magic Castle is that you get to meet your legends, right? It's like name any other profession. Let's say
there's no magic tennis club.
You're a musician, right? Where can you go and sit and play the guitar with Keith Richards, right?
Probably an opium den.
Exactly. I'm saying you can go to the Magic Castle, right? I grew up idolizing Chuck Jones, right? I get to see Chuck Jones all the time. I can sit and talk to Chuck Jones. I sat on the couch one night for half an hour talking to Mark Wilson, right?
I'm so jealous. You have no idea. I had lunch there one time with AJ, and I mean, having lunch with AJ is a big deal because I think AJ is fantastic. The table next to me was Milt Larson, and I just kept turning around.
He went there at lunch. I'm surprised that Richard Sherman wasn't there.
He might have been. I don't know. I was so distracted because lunch is for members only, and we got an invitation, and I was shocked. Not only was it intimate, but the prices were astounding. Not that AJ will let you pay, but no, I've been very fortunate because I work in the theme park industry, getting to meet so many fun magicians, and like meeting you and AJ and who's the guy that was always with AJ?
I'm the guy that took you in to see AJ.
Yeah, we ended up hiring him.
You got to see this. I know, and he still. If you're listening to this, AJ, you still owe me 10%.
Who was the guy we saw with AJ? The real gentle guy.
You're asking me.
Yeah, I know.
I don't remember that.
The balloon guy, right? Yeah, the balloon guy
With a mustache.
with a mustache. I can't.
God,
He looked like
the
the old Doritos guy. I can't think of his name though. It'll come to me in a flash at some point. Doesn't matter.
Check the online notes later. We'll figure it out.
Yeah, I'll figure it out. It doesn't matter. So, hey, anything else you want to add? We've talked for an hour and a half. We could go on another hour and a half, but you're probably exhausted.
No, I was. Thanks for having me.
Oh, no, thanks for coming on the show. I love talking magic. As you can tell, I've written 3 novels about magicians. I'm almost done with my 4th. By the time the 4th one comes out, it'll be a total of about 2,000 pages, all about magicians. When I was a kid, I was Tucker the Magnificent. Nice. I did a bunch of shows for my elementary school. The biggest illusion I did was the Hippity Hop Rabbits, which we borrowed from someone, and the metal tube that you put the balloon in and then shove knives through.
Gotcha.
Fantastic stuff. We borrowed those to go along with my Adams kit that I had, where I could take remember the paddle with all the stick with all the colored
hot rod,
and you flip it back and forth. I used to do all of that. And everybody who saw the magic shows they would nudge my mom and go, "He's going to be a surgeon. Look at those fingers." And I'd be like, "Woo,"
I know we've run out of time, but you grew up around here, right?
Yeah. Uh-huh.
So what magic shops were still around when you were younger?
We used to go to the House of Humor in Downey.
Okay.
That was that in Disneyland and Knott's.
So you didn't know? Did you ever go to Bentley's?
Where was Bentley's?
Bentley's. Can
we go now?
I wish.
Road trip.
half of my magic came from Bentley's. It was on 4th Street in Santa Ana.
No, we never went that far. We would go to...
It was a pawn shop / magic shop.
Oh, nice.
Half was a pawn shop, half was a magic shop.
I got a buddy that
Bentley was the greatest character you'd ever want to see in your life.
I got a buddy that specializes in human guillotines that are effective. Let me call him down here and see what he says. A pawn shop magic store. That's fantastic. No, we went to House of Humor in Downey and the Disneyland magic shop.
See, the Disneyland magic shop was expensive to me. I remember buying a squared circle from them, and you know.
Oh yeah, see, my family would take one trip a year, and you get one souvenir. So I would get something for the magic shop. Knott's had a magic shop, and
it was in a gypsy camp. Knott's had a great.
That was Chuck Burns, right?
Probably.
And his son Chip.
Yeah.
Chipper Lowell.
There was a place in Los Alamitos called The Magic Shop, which was run by Stan Allen, who now is the publisher of Magic Magazine. And then the Long Beach Mystics took that over, which is, we could probably do a whole other podcast on the Long Beach Mystics, but
and then
the
Magic Shop on Hollywood Boulevard.
Hollywood Magic, which opened now, they're up in Newport, those were the big ones growing up.
There was a pseudo magic shop in Bellflower. I don't remember what it was called. But it was also it was magic, and it's always magic and costumes, you know.
Yeah. I was going to say that. Well, I remember going to Bellflower, but it was a costume.
Yeah, it was magic and costumes. Uh-huh. And one time we went there, and I was 13, and the guy was hilarious, and he tried to sell my mom costumes that he told him were used in Star Wars.
Nice.
They weren't replicas; these were from the film. And God bless my mother. My mother was such an enabler. He told her that some of this stuff was like the band from the cantina. And at 13, I was like, no, that's not. I know exactly what those look like, and that doesn't look like that. But he had a Stormtrooper armor set that someone had obviously put a lot of work in making. It was $150 when I was 13, and my mother bought it for me. And I had it forever until it literally fell apart. So my mother was such an enabler with magic and silliness, but... What better way to spend your youth, you know?
Oh, yeah,
there's two kinds of kids. You're either on the little league field or you're wearing a cape, and I wore a cape.
My first paying magic gig was the House of Humor in Whittier, where I went there all the time. I was probably like 12 years old, and this lady, the lady that ran the place, or whatever, she wanted to take vacation. I can remember, or she wanted to take some days off or whatever, and I can remember. She turned the store over to me, a 12-year-old kid.
Nice.
So I would demonstrate magic and go ring up transactions.
It's like Barton Millhouse. I'm leaving the comic book shop in your hands. You're in charge. Now you're banned. Any illusions you dream of owning that you're like, it's out of my...
I'm kind of past that. I mean, there's a lot of illusions out there that I love, right? I mean, I think... There's a great, I can't remember the exact name of it, nor if I get the name of it, you'll just Google it, but Rick Thomas probably does the best presentation of it. It's an illusion where the girl levitates, and then she levitates up in the air, covered by a small silk, and then all of a sudden he's standing there, and he rises up to her level, and then he grabs the cloth, and pulls it, and she's like gone as he descends. And he did it a couple of years ago at the opening of our award show for the
that sounds
the castle on this big stage. But the beautiful thing is he did it probably at half stage, so not way in the back and in the dark. I mean, he did it half stage and the light. It was probably. I mean, I almost cried.
Yeah,
it's one of those beautiful things you've ever seen.
I watched Ed Alonzo at Knott's vanish a Corvette once.
Yeah.
And I knew how it was done, and knowing how it was done was even more impressive than being fooled because of the artistry and the timing of stuff like that. And I think that's where my appreciation for magic comes in, because you can't just buy a kit and call yourself a magician.
Yeah.
You have to really work at it. You have to stare at yourself in the mirror. Like, we saw a guy at the Magic Castle, amazing at cards, and at the end of the act, found out the guy's blind.
Yeah.
Oh my God! It was the most amazing thing I'd ever witnessed. I couldn't believe it.
He was trained by Vernon or challenged by Vernon, and considered the greatest card magician ever in the history of magic.
Unbelievable. Are you trying to wrap us up here?
Sorry.
I have cheesecake in the kitchen. Call
Yes.
it my name.
Yes. Well, in honor of the cheesecake, we will magically make ourselves disappear.
Yes.
You have anything to plug, sir?
I have nothing to plug.
Come on.
I'm just a hobbyist. I don't perform.
Anything else? Professional to plug?
No.
Do you sell?
Buy Oakley.
Buy Oakley. You're talking about the brand.
Yes.
You work for Oakley.
I do.
Okay, well, buy Oakley. That's good enough.
That's what pays my bills.
Well, I need some sunglasses, so I will buy Oakley sunglasses because the ones I'm wearing now are disintegrating off my head. I don't know what. I think they're water soluble. Ridiculous. Well, let's everybody give a big hand for Ken Baker for coming down. Magician extraordinaire. Thank you for opening up your memories and your life and talking about the castle.
And if any of your listeners truly are, if they just say, hey, I want to go to the castle because I want to go to the castle, but anybody who truly appreciates the castle, does want to go to the castle, does not know a member, get a hold of you and we'll see if we can.
Do you know what you're setting me up for by saying that?
Yes, you're the filter.
I will.
You'll weed everything out before it gets to me.
See, that'll be the bonus for those who listen to the end. Did you hear that? Guys, we go to the castle if I listen to the end.
I think we say we'll try to make something work out.
We'll try. As my mother would say, we'll see. We'll see always means no, though. All right, we all want to do it together? You ready?
Yes.
Thank you for listening to the Magical Show. I am Jeff Tucker. My guest has been
Ken Baker.
Ken Baker, magician extraordinaire. Sound off over there. Who are you?
I'm Austin. Luna.
Rachel.
Elizabeth.
Josie. Josie's so different now. And together, we are the magical magic kit by Adams called 91 Reasons.
Thanks for listening to 91 Reasons. Please subscribe and leave a review on iTunes. Find us on Facebook. Is anyone even still listening?
Oh no, sir, this wasn't built by a magician. This was built by a wizard, a man who can actually do what magicians pretend to do.